Hey there, welcome. My name is Jessica Buchanan, and I'm a New York Times bestselling author, professional speaker, and founder of Soul Speak Press, a non traditional publishing company created for women who've been through something, now they know something, and they can teach us something. In Her Words is a podcast designed to support aspiring memoir authors on their writing and publishing journey. It's hard work, this writing and publishing stuff, and I want to empower you with encouragement and information so you can keep sharing your truth. So grab your coffee, your notebook, find a quiet space, and let's dive in. Well, hey there. Welcome back to In Her Words. I'm so happy to be having this conversation with you. Thanks for joining in. I hope that you're learning something every time I put out another episode about publishing, about writing, about authorship, and just the writing life. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about how to decide which publishing path is right for you. Now, we've actually created a course that's very comprehensive. It's very robust around breaking down all the different ways you could go about publishing your memoir, manifesto, as we like to call them here at Soul Speak Press. But I thought I would just give a little, like a brief little introduction to all of the different avenues that you could be taking in terms of getting your story out there. And perhaps this will answer all the questions you might have. And if it doesn't, you might decide you need to dig a little deeper, go a little further, and check out our course. So, this episode is titled Which Publishing Path is Right for You? WRITE. Get it? Pun intended. Okay, so I'm going to break down the pros and cons, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple and pretty straightforward for five of the main publishing paths: traditional, hybrid, non-traditional, vanity, and then self-publishing. Now, of course, the paths that I know about the most and I'm most familiar with are the traditional publishing path and then the non-traditional. But we work with authors from all different walks of life and all different experiences. And I have conversations with authors from all of these different modes of publishing. So I just want to tell you what I know in case you're weighing your options and curious about someone's take on the different ways that you could go. So let's start with traditional. Of course, when we think of publishing, this is what every author dreams of. First, they probably dream that their blog is going to get picked up by a famous editor in one of the top 5 or 6 publishing houses in New York, and they're going to get an email with an offer for a conversation and then a huge advance, and they're going to become famous for their story and their writing prowess, that's not usually what happens, only in the movies. Sometimes it happens. But traditional publishing is, there are lots of different publishing houses that there are top 5, I guess now they're saying 6 publishing houses, mainly out of New York, that are the most reputable. They're the ones with the most connections in terms of marketing and PR. And they're the ones that are going to give out the biggest advances if you can get their attention. Now, there are lots of mid-level traditional publishing houses and then very genre specific. So, here on Soul Speak Press, In Her Words, we talk about memoir, manifesto, and that's it. So I'm not talking to children's book authors. I'm not talking to fiction, romance writers. I'm only strictly talking about memoir to you memoir writers right now. So here are a few of the pros and a few cons when it comes to traditional. I think let's start with the pros. Let's always start with the positive, right? A pro for traditional publishing route is that, gosh, talk about street cred, right? I mean, so much credibility. You're going to be given an advance. I don't know how, my advance for Impossible Odds was 6 figures. But I don't think that that's the standard unless you're, famous or you have a high media profile event, which I talk a lot about in the course that we produced. But still, there is that clout, right? That comes with having been chosen, having shopped your proposal around perhaps, or maybe gotten noticed through an op-ed that you've written. Oftentimes in traditional publishing, contracts are going to come to you by way of your platform and the audience that you've built. I was just listening to a podcast this morning. The guy that was being interviewed had worked for like 25 years in the traditional publishing industry with one of the top publishers. And he talked exactly about, and I talk so much about this in the course, that um, around 2006, with the advent really of social media, that's when the publishing landscape changed. And now these traditional publishers are really expecting not only a compelling proposal, a well-crafted manuscript, really talented writing. They are also expecting you to bring a well-laid foundation for a platform and a big audience with you, because at the end of the day, this is a business, and they want to make sure that, you are going to be a return on investment for them. So if they're going to advance you, whether it's 20,000 or 150,000, they want to make sure that you are going to be able to sell enough books through the platforms that you have already established and the audience that you're bringing. You Publishers used to be, like, traditional publishing used to be the gatekeeper to the mass media and PR. And now with social media, I mean, there's a flip side to everything. They no longer are the gatekeepers, because we as authors have direct access to our audience, right? To our potential readers. So, but they're still expecting you to have done that footwork and to bring that to them. So, my pro would be the legitimacy, right? The clout, and possibly the advance. A lot of us authors are trying to make a living. And one thing I think that is not discussed a lot or very openly about that advance, it's not going to be enough for you to live off of to complete your manuscript. Really, the intention now for your advance is for you to invest that in PR and marketing. Even these top 6 publishing houses, they don't have the PR budgets, they don't have the marketing budgets that they used to have before social media. Um, and so they don't invest on your behalf. So that advance, there's an expectancy that you're going to use that to hire your own PR team or your own marketing team. Now, they'll help you set a plan in place, perhaps, but the expectation is that you're going to use part of your advance to do that. Okay, so there's some pros. Some cons are that it's really not accessible to the average. And the average, when I say average, I don't mean like average story or average writer, but to the regular person who has an interesting story to share with lessons learned. Again, it has to do with that platform, that audience. If you've built yourself up 30,000, perhaps 50,000 followers on Instagram, TikTok, and you keep climbing, I think you'll have a better chance of getting someone's attention. But if you are of the mindset that you're here to write, not to attract followers on social media, then if you are committed to becoming a published author through traditional means, you're going to be waiting for a very long time before you can get somebody's attention. Perhaps it's an agent's attention to then shop your proposal around to a publisher, or just the publisher in general. I think I shared I don't know if the episode has come out yet, but I shared at some point, I was talking to an author who had published through traditional means, and she has an agent for her second book. And the agent loved it, loved the proposal, loved the concept, but was holding on to the proposal until she had built up her social media following big enough for somebody to actually take her seriously. So everything was ready to go. I think the manuscript was almost completely finished, but she had under 1,000 followers on Instagram. And the agent was like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to get anybody's attention. So there's a big con. Okay. It can take a really, really long time to get somebody's attention, to get somebody to look at your proposal, to get somebody to talk to you about your story. And so you have to decide what you want. You have to decide how much time you have to spend and how much emotional resources you can spend on this whole ordeal. Okay, hybrid. Let's talk about hybrid and what is hybrid. Now, I break this down in the course that we put out. But hybrid is like this mix. They were an answer to filling that gap for in the traditional market where people just weren't having access and any luck. And so hybrid came into being to fill that gap so that people who had great ideas and great stories and great information and lessons learned to share had actual access to publishing their material. Now, there are loads of hybrid companies out there. I don't have really any like personal experience other than anecdotal through some authors that I know, that I'm friends with, that I've had conversations with. Oftentimes the thing with hybrid is there's going to be an investment and then they're going to keep royalties. So my pro for hybrid would be that they are very fast and efficient. I mean, some of these hybrid companies that I've heard about can get your manuscript like laid out and your book cover finalized and get you on Amazon or on the shelves of, Barnes and Noble in like 3 to 6 months. So, if time is of the essence, then this could be a real valid potential opportunity and avenue for you to take. The con would be that they're really expensive. Some of them can be very, very expensive to work with. I've heard there's one, I'm not going to mention any names, but there is a hybrid company that I have heard some of my author friends have worked with, and it can be as low as like $3,000, and then it can be upwards of $80,000. It just depends on how much support you need, how quickly you need things to get done. The downside of hybrid is that they do typically keep a portion of your royalties. Now, I believe there are different contracts, and it probably depends on the company, and then the percentage, somewhere typically around what a traditional publisher is going to keep, probably around 10%. So I don't know if that matters to you. I always say, you're not going to get rich on book sales. It's all of the things that come to you and the opportunities that come to you by way of having written a book. So that's something to think about. But you got to do your research and see who you feel aligned with and who you feel comfortable with. A lot of times, too, I've heard that friends of mine have worked with hybrid publishing companies and it felt impersonal. Maybe sometimes even if we're talking on the lower investment spectrum too, they're not even really talking to real people. They don't have like a point of contact. They're perhaps chatting with a bot when they're running into a problem with something, or they're having to do a lot of the layout themselves. And so again, I think oftentimes you get out what you put in most efforts, and publishing is one of those. So you really got to do your research. You got to do some digging and see what kind of reviews the hybrid company has that you're thinking about working with, and perhaps even, I mean, I wouldn't work with somebody unless you've had like a virtual conversation with them and you've had a meet and greet, and then I would ask to be connected with some of their past clients so that you can have a conversation and get a referral, like a real referral from them, and see what it's actually like to work with them. If you're thinking about investing 20, 30, 40, 50, $60,000, they should be very happy to provide you with that. I know we do. Okay, so then let's move on to non-traditional, which is what Soul Speak Press is. Now, what makes us different from hybrid is that we don't actually keep royalties. I do a royalty split on our anthologies just because I am writing and I'm the lead author for Deserts to Mountaintops, but that's the only one. If you're a singular manuscript author and you're writing, you have your own cover or you're leading your own anthology here, we do not keep any of your royalties. You get to keep all of those. So the pro for working with someone like us with Soul Speak Press, non-traditional, and I'm speaking for us, is that we're really personal here. We're small, we're boutique, we're very invested in your like the service experience and the quality that you experience when you work with us. And I think a lot of smaller boutique kind of niche publishing companies are the same way. You're always going to have a person of contact, which is usually me or my counterpart, Lauren. Um, you're always going to be talking to a real person. You're always going to have a real person answering your emails. And if we don't know the answer to a question, then we will make sure we find out. Um, I think the other thing that I have written on my list here, a pro for working with Soul Speak Press in general, is that we're really soul centered, we're really heart centered, and we are about connection. And so we really connect with all of our authors on a personal level, again, because we specialize in really hard stories. So we're very focused on that emotional connection and that empathetic component. We are here to serve you, and we know that it's hard to tell these stories a lot of times, even if we're speaking from our scars and we're writing from our scars and not just our wounds. It's still deeply emotional and impactful, and we want to love you. We like to say we love you through the process. Um, a con for working with us, that's hard. That's like being in a job interview where they're like, tell us what one of your biggest challenges in the workplace is, and then you have to think of something that's like positive and spin it kind of negatively, or negative and spin it positively. But um, I would say a con with working with us is that I still think that it's a little stigmatized. Um, I think the world is definitely used to self-publishing or non-traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, for sure. But here's an example. This happened last year. I was at a like a birthday party for one of my kids, or no, it was like a going away party. And there were like some women there that I didn't know, and we were sitting around the picnic table. It was a pool party. Um, and talking everybody was talking about what they do, and I said I have a publishing imprint, and we work in Memoir. And one of the women was like, oh, that's interesting, asked me a couple of questions, and then I said, yeah, I'm happy to bring over a couple copies of Deserts to Mountaintops. And she said, oh, that's okay. She said, I'm really limited on time, and so I only read books that have been published by top publishing houses. I don't read anything like alternatively published because it's not worth my time. And I was like, okay, fair enough, rock on. But wow. I mean, if only we could all be that honest. But it was an interesting interaction to have, because I was like, wow, people still hold, I mean, they still hold a bit of a stigma around not being endorsed by the experts, right? Never mind the fact that so many of us have so many interesting experiences and reflections, and are just really gifted writers, and the fact that we are like just self-starters and doing all of this ourselves. But I get it, and we're not for everybody, but we are for who we are for, and that is where we keep our focus. So that would be my con for non-traditional. Okay, so how many of you have heard of vanity publishing? I feel like that's such a bad word, right? Vanity, you're so vain, right? And that's exactly what vanity publishing is. It's essentially publishing your own manuscript because you want your story in print. Um, and so it's not here the pros and cons. The pros are that like anybody can publish. There are no real standards. There are no criteria. The companies that do vanity publishing are not advertising it that way. They're probably even contacting you and preying on your exhaustion and your rejection, your multiple rejections. And they're not usually, and again, I'm just like overgeneralizing. I'm not thinking about any particular vanity publishing company, but I'm just like a wide swath of what I've seen. They're not, they don't usually come across as very professional. So they'll publish anything. So they're publishing, juvenile fiction, they're publishing, romance, they're publishing kitty lit, they're publishing nonfiction, self-help. I mean, it's just like anything and everything, any manuscript that comes to them they'll publish. And so, like, the downside to that is that there's real no quality control. There's no quality at all. And so, I think those are the things, oftentimes, those are the methods and the products that often give these non traditional or alternative routes to publishing a bad name. So, you do have to be really, really careful. One way to know, you're like, well, what's the difference between like you, Jess, and So Speak Press and Vanity Publishing? Um, you know, part of it again is about the professional standards that these companies follow, both in business and then just from a manuscript perspective. We're very professional. We have standards that we follow, writing standards, even down to like working through graphic design for our book covers. And again, you're talking to real people, like you're connecting with real people every time you talk to us. These vanity publishers, you're probably not going to connect with a real person. You're probably going to be emailing back and forth. Oftentimes, they're cheaper than the hybrid or the non-traditional routes. But again, you get what you pay for. So be careful. A word of caution there. All right. And so then the last one that I want to talk about on this episode is the self-publishing route, which is really, really um, becoming more and more popular every day, every month, every year. Millions of books are making their way onto Amazon by way of self-publishing. And I think that, lots of very successful authors who've built author brands, they've built platforms around their work and around their stories, have oftentimes self-published first and then maybe shown great success and moved on to more traditional means. But they've hustled and they've worked really hard and they've built that platform and they've built that audience and they've built the email list. And so they can bring all of that to the table for their traditional publishing um, experience or opportunity. So some pros around self-publishing are that it's doesn't have to be expensive. You can actually publish on Amazon for free. Now, I don't know how you do that because that's not the business that we're in. But there are lots of companies out there that will show you how to self-publish at a very minimal cost. So if that feels like something, maybe you've just got a couple $100 and you got more time than you got dollars, perhaps self-publishing or hiring one of these particular companies or purchasing a course or something in self-publishing would be a really good route for you to take. One thing to think about too, and I talk about this in the course, is if you got to really think about the long game here. Oftentimes I meet authors who invest heavily with us because this is like a one and done deal for them. Yes, they perhaps are coaches or they're speakers, but this is going to be like their main thing. Like this is their main focus, this memoir that they've written. They don't really see necessarily that they're going to keep writing book after book after book. It could be really smart and prudent of you if you think big picture and you're looking at the long game and you think you might have 3, 4, 5, 6 books in you to learn how to publish it and learn the ins and outs and commit yourself to learning that process, so that you save yourself time, you save yourself money. Even, even if you do end up, say, writing your third book after you've self-published the first two and you shop a proposal around and get picked up by a traditional publisher, it's not going to hurt to have all of that industry knowledge and experience under your belt. That's just going to help you protect yourself and go into whatever's next more informed and more empowered and knowing what to ask for and what's possible and what's not being done and what should be done, should be being done. So I think that if you are someone who foresees that you're going to be writing and publishing and looking to speak and build a platform for a long time, then self-publishing is a very valid way to enter the industry. Um, so I think the con to all of that is that if time is not your currency right now, then you could find it really frustrating, and because it's a lot to decipher, it's a big learning curve. Like again, I've been doing this for 10 years, over 10 years now, and there is no way in HE double hockey sticks that I would ever go out and try to self-publish because I just don't know enough. That's why I have Memoir Publishing, who's our mother publishing house. They like do all that, right? So all I have to worry about is the manuscripts that I'm working on with my authors and then just getting them some of the information they need for cover design and layout and stuff. Like there is no way I would want to like mess around with all of that. But if you are the kind of person who likes a challenge and you're a quick learner and you feel like this would be an empowering process, then I say go for it, especially if you have the time, if you have more time than you have money. So if any of this has been helpful to you, yay. I'm so glad. I'm so excited. But if you feel like, you know, this has kind of piqued your interest and gotten you thinking about which publishing route you should take and you need more information, go to soulspeakpress.com and look at under the tab courses. And we have a which publishing path is right for you course. And, check that out. It's like 5 hours long. There are templates, there are outlines, there are all kinds of things to help you make the best decision for yourself and for your memoir. So if this has been helpful, I'm so glad. If you would go and subscribe and leave us a review or connect with us on Instagram at Jessica C. Buchanan or Soul Speak Press. We would love to connect with you. We would love to hear about your publishing experience or your writing and publishing goals. If you have a story to share and a publishing journey that you'd love to share in her words, we would love to hear it. And so reach out to us, pitch us your story and your experience, and let's chat. In the meantime, more than anything, I hope you keep writing. In Her Words is hosted by me, Jessica Buchanan, and is produced by Soul Speak Press, a non-traditional publishing house for women who are ready to tell their story. If you would like to know more about our submission process, I encourage you to check us out at www.soulspeakpress.com or follow us over on Instagram at Soul Speak Press. We appreciate all your questions, and if you would like to leave us a review, we would be so grateful.